More stimulus checks could be on the way. We're going to give you the full story behind that. Some people are saying it's $5,000. Others are saying it's going to be a lot more. And others are saying there's not going to be any stimulus checks. We're going to get to the bottom of that for you here today. Also, an economic warning out of Walmart because of bad earnings projections and what's already happened. We're going to get into that and a lot of other news here, including some big news based on the central bank, what might be happening to the central bank or happening with the central bank. We'll get into that and more. Let's go ahead and get started right here. Right now, we have the current administration out there talking about sending out $5,000 stimulus checks using the money saved from the DOGE audits and the DOGE cuts and the findings of fraud, which was rampant fraud, misallocation of funds, all kinds of nastiness that we talked about here that we reported on. But $5,000, will that be the case? Well, here's how they laid it out over at Forbes. The proposal calls for 20% of DOGE's targeted $2 trillion in savings to be returned to roughly 79 million tax-paying households. And they're saying that would result in $5,000 per household. Now, that's the targeted savings. Keep in mind, that hasn't happened yet. That's just what is projected, and we know that projections can be off by a lot. If you see the type of projections they've done with the economy, it's always unexpected news that comes up, so the projections are always way off. But this is what they're saying out of DOGE, so maybe it'll be more accurate than the economic numbers that we've seen projected that are way off. But yeah, that does add up, though, if you do the numbers, because just bring up a calculator here. We've got targeted $2 trillion. There's million, there's billion, there's trillion. Divided by 79 million tax-paying households comes up with $25,000. But 20% of that, roughly 1/5, would put you right at about $5,000. So the numbers actually do add up in this case. And I apologize, I meant to do that over here where everybody could see it. Let's do it again here. 2 trillion, is that right? Divided by 79 million equals $25,000, roughly 1/5 of that, which is 20%, gets you right at about $5,000. Now, will it happen? And two, if it does happen, what type of an effect will it have? Right. So what they're saying now is that it's tax-paying households. In other words, lower income households that don't earn enough to pay into taxes, they may not get a stimulus check. But what they're saying is it won't be inflationary. And when I say they, I'm talking about the administration, because one of their promises was is that there's going to be lower prices, lower cost of living, and no more inflation. Well, if we look back at the previous stimulus checks, 2020, 2021, even some in 2022, I believe, those were heavily inflationary, not just because of the checks. Well, you also have to factor in people stopped going to work, right? Production shut down or slowed down in many cases. So that was a little bit different than what's happening now. But if you just send out money to tax-paying households, what's likely to happen? Well, it'll be a combination of people paying down debt and people will go out and spend it. We've seen what happens when people get issued credit, just credit card limits. A lot of people will go out and spend it just because they have it. Even if it's not money saved, even credit, they'll spend the money. So we know if they're going to borrow money or go into debt and swipe credit cards to go buy stuff or go on vacations, etc., of course, a lot of people are just going to go ahead and spend the $5,000. I would argue that more people will spend it versus saving it. That's what I would expect to happen. So will that be inflationary? Yes, absolutely. Now, is that the only factor in the cost of living / inflation? No, there's lots of other factors. All the job cuts happening right now, those are deflationary, right? Less people with jobs. And I was actually joking with a friend of mine that the current administration out there with promises of lower cost of living and basically promising prices to come down, maybe he's going to do that with all the jobs that he's cutting. And if enough people lose their jobs, of course, no one will have money to spend, or a lot less people will have money to spend, and that will be deflationary or disinflation, even deflation, right? So we'll have to see how it plays out, folks. But this is going to be very, very interesting. What are your thoughts on the stimulus checks from the savings from DOGE? And we're going to get into more about what DOGE is planning on and the type of massive savings that could even surpass $2 trillion. I think it could be even a lot more than that if they do what they say they're going to do. Now, according to the DOGE clock, they're estimating that they saved about $118 billion so far. So we're obviously far, far away and still way off from the $2 trillion that they expect. But we're only a few weeks into this, and if it's already $118 billion, then it could be well beyond even $2 trillion, especially if what is being talked about plays out. Look what's being talked about, folks. This is massive. This is crazy, right? And this is out of Reuters via Yahoo Finance. The administration, they're saying that they're going to be possibly auditing the Fed, the Federal Reserve. How in the world do you audit the Federal Reserve? They're supposed to be private. Well, a lot of things are going to be changing, folks. And you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of this? Is it to get more power for the people in power right now, the current administration? Or will it actually help the average American in the end? Folks, if they look and see what the Fed's been doing, they're going to see, I think, trillions of dollars, just like every other audit that we found so far. Well, at least several billion, but in this case, I think it's going to be in the trillions of dollars. We don't know what they've been doing, right? We get looked at under a microscope or under a magnifying glass. Everything that we make, we have to report it to Uncle Sam. So now the cards are being flipped a bit. Let's look at the agencies that are auditing us. Let's look at the agencies that control the money, that create the money. I'm all for it. I hope it is going to be a real look at how the money's being spent. We've already seen all the craziness and all the things that the money's being spent on across the globe. We already saw a lot of Social Security recipients were actually in the hundreds of years old, right? Impossible numbers, like 150 years age of plus. I even saw some of them. So who's getting the money? How did this happen? Is it just oversight? Or is this a way to give out money to certain people, certain groups? And we saw that media groups were funded by some of this money out of USAID, right? So a lot of rampant misallocation of funds, to say the least. A lot of people are going so far as to say that this is criminal, that these people that are doing this should be under the jail. So then you have to prove, did they do this on purpose? Was it a mistake? Was it an oversight? So it's going to get very, very messy. I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot of different opinions on both sides going at each other. But we're going to have some fun, seeing how this plays out. This is going to be a grab your popcorn type of thing to continue to sit back and watch, in my opinion. And it's very interesting because there's kind of a legal battle happening right now. Look at this. Federal judge blocks DOGE from accessing sensitive U.S. Treasury Department material. And of course, now they're going after the judge. They're saying, why would you block us? We're just trying to audit these agencies and see what's going on. We're trying to audit pretty much everybody. They're trying to audit the FDIC, the central bank, you name it. They're looking to audit it. Social Security Administration, right? And the list goes on. And the question is, are these real audits? And what's the motive behind the audits, right? I'm all about transparency. And if this is real, if this is actually something that they're really going to do in an honest way, I'm all for it. In fact, I don't know who would be against this. Why would you want people looking at everything you do? They know how much you make. You have to report all your earnings. But the agencies out there and entities that create the money and send it all over the world, why would you not want to know where that money's going and what they're up to? To me, it doesn't make any sense, people that are against this, right? But maybe it's just me. Let me know down in the comments. What are the negatives? What are the positives, right? I don't see too many negatives at all. All right, more news, folks. Let's talk about Walmart. Walmart issues a warning. And now first people were speculating that their warning of slowdown in growth had to do with tariffs, but now they're talking about has more to do with a weight loss drug. And we just looked at the stock a few days ago. We showed you the chart, but it dropped 6.5%. It did slightly recover in after hours trading. But what they're talking about here with this drug, and this is out of Market Watch, and Chief Executive Doug McMillon said on a post-earnings call that the pressure on the company has been seeing is from continued shift in demand towards products that are less profitable with lower margin, particularly groceries and health and wellness, which includes pharmacy business, and away from higher margin general merchandise items. The financial officer, David Rainey, said grocery was a standout the last quarter, with sales in the mid to single digit percent range compared with overall comparable sales growth of 4.6%. For health and wellness, Rainey said the growth was even faster in the mid-teens percentage, largely due to a class of diabetes and obesity drugs that include Novo, Ozempic, and Wegovy. I'm not sure how to say that, but in other words, they're seeing different levels of growth in different sectors, different parts of the grocers, different areas. And by the way, those drugs being used for weight loss, folks, be careful. Anytime you see a shortcut, there's going to be side effects. Just think about the steroids, right? When steroids were used, the people looked great. They were in great shape, but then you saw them a few years later. They looked deflated and they looked pretty beat down, some of those athletes that were on the steroids. All right, moving on here, folks. More job cuts out of these agencies. IRS, thousands of layoffs. It's going to be very interesting. So these IRS workers, what I'm being told is they're being offered jobs in other areas like law enforcement and patrolling the border and stuff like that. So we're going to see how this plays out here, folks. Imagine getting a job at the IRS and now you're laid off. It's going to be 6,000 employees starting today, starting Thursday, as part of job cuts, slicing through federal government. That comes in the thick of tax filing season. So many people are concerned that they may not get their tax returns, right? So it's kind of a bittersweet thing for some people, or it's kind of a sweet and sour type of thing. If you're waiting for a tax return, you don't want this to happen. You don't want there to be any delays. But if you have to pay in, you're kind of wondering, wow, things are pretty volatile right now. Should I wait to file and see what happens? What are they going to find out of this agency and all the other agencies that are being looked at, right? So to me, it's again, a time of caution, and I've been saying this for a while now. I said here months ago, even before November, I said the new administration that comes in, which is the one we have now, it's going to get wild. It's going to get crazy. We've never seen audits like this. So interesting times, folks. I mean, what do you think about all this? Are we going to get stimulus checks? Will they be inflationary? I think yes, unless there's so many job losses that we start seeing deflation, or unless somehow there's a connection to the banking system. What if we find out that these banks were just funded out of thin air? Like we know that they were already with the way the banks were propped up in the previous bank failures and the financial crisis. We know that they were funded out of currency just created out of nothing. So what if we find out that it was nonstop funding for the banks and that this was used as a way to keep the housing market propped up, to keep home prices unaffordable, to keep the bubble inflated? And what to go further, what if we find out that investment firms were given money just at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer to come in and buy real estate out from under people that wanted to buy a home for themselves? I'm not saying that's going to be uncovered, but what if we do find something that shocking or even bigger, right? So again, a time of caution, folks. What do you think about this? Will the stimulus checks help you if they are sent out? Let's just say $5,000. Let's talk about $5,000. Will that be a factor? All tax-paying households get the $5,000 stimulus check. Will it cause inflation? I think the answer is going to be yes. I think even without that, though, we're going to see more inflation. All right. But again, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Let me know what you think about all this down in the comments, everybody. We're going to leave it at that for now. As always, keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.